with them? Oh, this, I'm personally very curious to know. So please go ahead and give us some wisdom. And you're still on mute.
Okay, hi. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, that was good.
All right. So I'm just gonna say a little bit about myself. I didn't like prepare a whole speech here. I'm thinking more like conversational, but I'm Lynn and I'm from Bangkok, Thailand. So I recently joined WWF by the end of last year. But before then, I had been doing climate activism and environmental writing and some journalism beforehand. So right now for WWF, I'm a communications consultant. So I mainly work on writing stories, human-led stories, to use in conservation, because these social and environmental issues, they go hand in hand. So I was going to talk a bit more about my climate activism side earlier, but I guess we're more focused on WWF now. So what I'd like to talk about today, what I've learned from over this year of mainly from working in climate activism and then moving on to WWF, and then from my experience writing stories and about the environment to get people to care more. I'd like to talk today about communication, and more specifically, this topic was meant to help people communicate better about climate change. But I think this would apply with anyone who wants to communicate about any cause they stand for, or any issue at all that they hope that people would care about. So I want to speak from my experience as a climate activist. So yes, I'll I'll just talk about how I first started organizing my climate strike around March last year. That was when the global climate strike took place, which if I'm guessing that many people listening here would have heard about climate strikes before, but if not, they're strikes basically mostly youth-based, youth-led, and it was initiated by this Swedish girl called Greta Thunberg, and she initiated this movement across the world for youth to strike for climate action. And so in March last year, I organized my first climate strike, and it was a lot, in Bangkok, it was a lot from anger and frustration. I got angry, writing about the environment for so long. The more I learned about the issues, the more I realized that, it's really big, and it seemed like no one was really doing anything about it. And the sixth mass extinction is about to come, and no one really seemed to care. So I got really angry, and I figured, hey, how hard should organizing a climate strike be? And turns out it was pretty hard. But it was 4 days before the global climate strike, and what I did was I started a Facebook event. And that in itself was pretty easy until, people started asking like, oh, where are we meeting? What are we doing? And I was like, oh, I don't really know. But then eventually the Friday came to when I had to lead that climate strike. And it went pretty well. Of like some 30, 40 people showed up, which was pretty big number for a country in Asia. It's unlike Europe or in North America, where really large masses of people show up. But people showed up, and it really proved me wrong that, initially I started it because I thought no one cared, but people really do care. And that was the first day when I really started to set foot into, Thailand's group of environmentalists and tree huggers, and my Facebook friends, started piling out with, beach cleanup volunteers, tree planting volunteers, biologists, sustainability professors, indigenous rights activists, and many more. And I just felt a lot better about, our progress with climate action and all our environmental issues. Because I had been writing about the environment for a long time, and I just felt really hopeless because it felt like no one cared. But then as I made more friends more friends in the environmental circle, I started to realize that like everyone was saying the same things. Everyone seemed to agree with everyone else, and it seemed that we were entering what you might know as groupthink. So that I felt was what I began to diagnose as a problem, whether it's with environmental issues or with social issues. That's in communication. I think that's something we have to be really careful about. So I want to talk about how you can get someone to listen to you about your cause and care and act upon it. First thing to actually get someone to listen is to be aware about groupthink and these filter bubbles that we've started to put ourselves into. You see, groupthink is exactly what happens when you get a group of nature enthusiasts or whatever sort of enthusiasts in your case, and you put them in the same room and you leave them to talk. So, it's like a party, but everyone talks about the same things. And so, this is kind of the same way with what's going on with our networking tendencies right now, or as well as our social media algorithms. We've started to trap ourselves in this thing called a filter bubble, which is this term coined by an internet activist, whose name is Eli Pariser, and he defines it as a state of intellectual isolation. You see, I first began writing about the environment because I cared deeply about it, and I wanted my friends and my family to care about it too. And I wrote about it. I put it out on blogs, and I hope that people who would read about it would, care more about it too. And I thought it worked for a while. I thought, maybe my articles, people enjoyed reading it, and then they would learn more about it, and then learn more about how to conserve or live sustainably, until it hit me that whoever was going to click on an article titled "The Key to Solving Thailand's Plastic Crisis" on a Greenpeace website where I wrote, anyone who clicked on that link is probably going to be someone who already cared about the environment. And this sort of thinking happens outside the internet as well. I remember attending a climate conference, and I swear I must have heard throughout the day, the lines of "we need climate justice now" at least a couple dozen times. And it was just starting to confuse me of like, who are we really trying to convince in that room when everyone in the room was already agreeing with us, But don't get me wrong. It's great to form a group of like-minded people because we need that kind of support. Getting praise and getting cheers from people, it can really make you feel significant. It can really make you feel like you're making a real difference. But with all these support groups and collaborative platforms we have nowadays, it's really vital that we don't just preach to the converted. It's very important to remember that not everyone cares about what you're working for or about what you're talking about. For example, with climate change or a lot of environmental issues, scientists have been warning us for a very long time now about the use of fossil fuels, about our rising temperatures. But if reasoning and logic and scientific evidence had worked, we wouldn't be where we're at by now. So to me, that means, one, we either can't make everyone in the world agree with the same facts, which that's probably true, but two, there must be something wrong about the way we're communicating about these issues. So number one, to get someone to listen and care, I'd say, is understand where they're coming from and empathize with them. You know, climate change has already taken place across the world, affecting the poorest and most vulnerable communities first. But for a lot of people, it just isn't clear why they need to care. So we need to show people why they specifically need to care. You see, I'm 22-year-old who graduated from college last year. I still like traveling. I like going to music festivals. I have a job I have to keep. I have, you know, friends and family I have to meet and maintain relationships with. A lot of different people, a lot of different priorities. We all have different things that we care about. And, you know, when you have this one cause that you want to throw at people and hope to get their action on it, you have to show them why it matters to them specifically, how they're directly related to it. So then you need to find a middle ground with where they're at and where you're at, and you get in between, and then you find that, you know, that kind of middle ground, that win-win situation where both your interests align and you make your cause relevant to them. You know, you might begin to ask your conversation partner about what they enjoy as a hobby, what they struggle with in life or in work, what their problems are, what their cultural ethics are, and so on. And so you with that, you know, it's a lot of basic human needs. For example, basic physiological needs like food, water, shelter, safety needs, social needs like belonging somewhere, or self-esteem, or freedom, creativity, self-actualization. All these needs everyone has. You just have to figure out what they really care about to then link that to the topic you want them to care about. I think this is, you know, probably something that marketers, advertisers would learn about when they're trying to sell stuff to people. So in the same way, if you're trying to sell people a cause and you want them to buy your cause and act on it, you have to understand your audience before you're going to throw at them a bunch of information. And with that, when you finally have gotten their attention, and now you want them to understand something, you want to educate them, when you're communicating to them those messages you have in store, you have to speak human language. You have to speak in a language that they understand. For example, with climate change, we have to understand that not everyone is a climate scientist. If you're a conservationist, you have to understand that not everyone understands biology or understands molecular physics, or, you know, all sorts of these technical things, or political science or sociology. In climate change, we talk about carbon offset, greenhouse gases, transboundary air pollution. These terms, a lot of climate activists might understand, but to many, it just doesn't make any kind of sense. So we have to keep it simple, and we have to avoid jargon and complicated vocabulary. And going back to step one, you know, understanding where they're at, what's in their vocabulary, then explaining what you want to from their point. And with that, now comes how you explain it in emotion. You have to use emotion before reason in a lot of cases, because, for example, with a lot of movements, with climate strikes, it was one little girl who was frustrated with the state of the world and our environment right now that got so many people to care. It wasn't, a lot of scientists have come out before with a bunch of graphs and a bunch of, you know, spikes on a chart. But humans, as you know, as social animals, we we've just evolved to care more about emotion and about feelings and stories rather than a bunch of numbers and fact sheets. And so, that's what really gets people to care about a certain issue, when they feel that the other person is in harm, or they are in harm, or their friends or family are in harm. And when they finally acknowledge that problem, you have to offer them solutions. Because congratulations, now your friend knows about climate change, or your friend knows about people in poverty, or about people suffering from a disease. But what do they know? What do they know about what to do next? If you leave them with just the problem, they're just left without any call to action. And they don't know what to do next with this information you've just given them. So while it's good and optimistic to believe that people, are naturally altruistic and they want to do good, it's easier to just help them do good. So, offer solutions that are actually easy to do. Offer benefits and rewards to go with those solutions. If you do this for the environment, you get healthier, you save money, you get respect, or you have more friends, or so on. Things that show direct benefits for these people. Or better yet, solutions that are cheaper, easier, quicker, cooler, more convenient, more fun. So like solutions that are so good that they don't even feel that they're changing for the cause. They feel like they're changing for themselves. It's such a great alternative that they don't even have to choose. And yeah, these are, once people have these kinds of solutions, they feel like first they're benefiting from it personally, and then they feel like they're doing good for the planet or for the society. But when people don't feel that way, it's important not to force them, because no one likes being forced. When you have a belief or you have a lifestyle that you are accustomed to, and someone, especially a stranger, comes along and tells you, hey, what you're doing is wrong, what you believe is wrong, it is not good for any movement or to get anyone to act on anything. Psychologists have this thing they call the backfiring effect. So, when you try to change people's minds and you force them to do something, or you attack their beliefs, they're actually less likely to change, and instead they stand stronger on their point and are more stubborn in a sense. And yeah, very important not to force people. And last point I want to get to with this communications idea is, whether it's again with environmental issues or with social issues, hope and optimism is much stronger than fear and pessimism, cynicism, because when you're part of a movement, you want to feel like you're making a difference. You want to feel like what you're doing is for a change, that it's working, that it's not just for nothing. I know that people like Greta, she doesn't want you to hope, she wants you to panic. But that kind of panic is only good if you choose to do something constructive with it. Psychologists have found that a lot of times panic actually causes inaction, because we all think, oh, well, if what I do doesn't make a change, then, and that we're all going to die in the end, what worth is it for, if I do it right now? So people are more susceptible to fear when they're already stressed, but panic and fear actually causes people to, it makes them less willing to act. Instead, hope inspires real action. If you show people, look at the conservation areas, protected areas we've built, and look at the progress we've made, look at the difference we've made so far. Everyone wants to become part of that movement. Everyone wants to feel like they're creating change. So to end on this note, with whatever issues and whatever causes we're working on, I'm sure, you know, everyone watching this right now wants to leave some sort of mark on the world. I want you to give that kind of hope to people, and I want you to give that kind of optimism to people that, hey, I know there are a lot of obstacles and challenges out there, but what we're doing right now is good. What we're doing right now works, and if we keep doing it, it will create a difference. Show them not only why it's, you know, us environmentalists or human rights activists who are in this problem together, but why every single one of us is in this together, and show them how they're not just part of the problem, but how that also means they're part of the solution. On that note, yeah, show people why it's so important to join your cause, and show them that they can help your cause too. I hope that helps.
And so what's next for you? You're going to be doing a TED talk about it. You're writing a book. What are your plans?
I I'm very focused on a lot of storytelling right now. So I've mainly been writing, but now I'm exploring a lot of filmmaking. And yeah.
So do you have anything, uh, say, more complex coming up? Like you can write a lot without having a greater goal, or you can write already knowing that most of your writing will be consolidated into a book. So do you have
Oh,
like this kind of 5-year perspective? Okay, everything I'm doing in that is for a greater purpose, and this is how it's going to be serving or achieve that purpose in the
the
future.
greater purpose is definitely environmental conservation. I mean, I've got that goal, you know, with environmental conservation goals of say increasing green space in Thailand is definitely one of my bigger goals, and climate action. But on my personal side, I just really want to get good at storytelling, and I'm exploring a lot of different modes right now, really learning what my best output is, whether it's through writing or filmmaking. But what I'm really focused on making right now are a few film series, mainly on climate change. So one of the series I'm working on is like a series of following the supply chain of daily commodities, just to show people that I think once people understand where things come from and where they end up, they're hopefully more conscious about their life decisions. But another big thing is just people's curiosities. Um, and I'm really interested in working with youth, more so, not 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 particularly, I mean, not just working with youth, but working in portraying the perspective of youth. I think curiosity is one big one big trait that, because it has died down in a lot of people, whether it's with growing up or it's with the technology we have nowadays. When people aren't curious, they aren't curious about the natural world, about their consumption, about their disposal, and all these things in the world. And that's why we live so unsustainably. Another part is just empathy. You know, kids can feel very empathetic, and kids can just be so innocent. Like there's that certain of way of innocence, and I want to portray that in the storytelling that I do, and hopefully reach back to that, you know, those basic human values that, you know, with environmental or social issues, we talk a lot about politics and about policy and technical difficulties, technological advances, but I feel like the bigger problems really lie in just our core foundations. People fight in politics because they've forgotten a lot of empathy, or a lot of, you know, very like basic happiness. because people fight over territories and so on. So I just want to see how I could use storytelling or my activism to reconnect people with that very basic values.
Well, I would like to say two things because we have to wrap now to go to the next
Mm-hmm.
speaker. I would suggest that you consider joining the Explorers Club as a member. And you could probably join as a student member, which is easier because then you only need one referral, and I can do that for you. If you want to join as a full member, you kind of need to do pretty crazy stuff, as in, yeah, flying around the world without landing in the, not always at that level, but I think it would be harder for you to go for full membership, but the student membership should be fine. And I'll post it in the group chat, the link, so you can check it out. Just go to student memberships. And the other thing is that a friend of mine in Bangkok has one of the biggest media studios in the country. It's called asianworks.com, and I'm glad to introduce you to him. He's an amazing guy and has been to lots of really interesting places.
Is his name Mark by any
Mark
chance?
Laban,
Okay, yeah, I've met him before.
okay, so if you already know him, I guess you can reach out. But if you need an introduction in terms of maybe helping them out, they have really high quality studios that for a very, very long time. So I think that these seems to be the tracks that you're looking at. And hey, he's in Bangkok, right? Doesn't get much better than this. You just need to
Yeah, I've seen his it's at the FCCT building.
Yeah, it's where I have the foreign correspondence club, which is a very cool club, by the way. It's like a very nice place to chill. So just jump into a tuk-tuk and go there and have a chat with him. And thank you so much for sharing your
Thank
insight.
you.
And so, krap and krap.
ขอบ
And
คุณค่ะ
you